Linked to a piece at the Daily Caller at Smerconish.com today, you'll see the right to try versus the right to die. It's an essay written by a friend of mine, Donald Mihalek. Don Mihalek is the vice president of the Federal Law Enforcement Officers Association Foundation. He has inspired today's poll question, which is this: should terminally ill patients have the right to access experimental medicine not yet approved by the FDA? This is Don Mihalek. Hey, Don, thanks so much for being here.
Hey, Mike, how are you?
What made this a passion of yours? I didn't know of your interest or involvement in this particular area. Is there something personal about it? Do you know people who've been in this position?
Well, I think every American knows somebody that's battling a terminal illness or a devastating disease. For me personally, my father-in-law, Gene Adam, was diagnosed with Parkinson's and suffered with the disease for 10 years. And amazingly, in the 10 years that he battled Parkinson's, not one advance was made.
One advance meaning in terms of advance of dealing with Parkinson's, therefore...
Correct. In terms of treatment, in terms of medications, he was on the same protocols for 10 years, and nothing has ever changed. So that sort of woke us up to the issues that individuals with terminal diseases face every day.
And while he was battling Parkinson's, were you hearing, oh, there are these drugs that are in the pipeline, if only you could get access?
That actually didn't come to light for us until recently, where I'm talking to you now, Mike, from the Newtown Athletic Club in Newtown, who actually had an advocacy group formed to advocate for ALS patients. Two of them I refer to in the article, Matt Bellina and Frank Mangiello, who both are dealing with ALS, and they brought to our attention the fact that within the FDA pipeline, there's a tremendous amount of trial drugs that they can't access because of the way the federal government regulations and the corporations sort of prevent their access into that trial pipeline.
I'm reading what you wrote. Frank Mangiello, a 48-year-old father of 6, was diagnosed with ALS last year. Frank said, I have an 80% chance to die within the next 2 years. I'm not ready to leave my family, and as an American, I have a right to pursue life. So what is the right to try movement?
So the right to try movement was motivated in large part by patients facing terminal illness because they see different drugs within the FDA pipeline that are going through the trial phases, but because of the regulations involved with the trial process, they are not permitted to access those trial drugs because of either geographic factors or because of the regulations involved. For instance, if a terminal ill patient has been diagnosed for over 2 years, they can't access a trial. If a terminal ill patient doesn't meet certain markers, they won't allow them to access a trial. It's almost as if between the FDA and the pharmaceutical companies who are developing these treatments, they're cherry-picking the individuals that can access these trials. And for the terminally ill patients, it's just a non-starter because they don't have time to wait or waste. Even the president's own administration has come up with an 8 to 14 year timeline that it takes for a drug to go through the trial process. For most terminally ill patients, especially those battling ALS, they have about 2 years max.
Don, I'm learning about this from what you wrote and from our conversation for the first time, so I'm just reacting to it
Sure.
in terms of what pops into my mind. It would seem to me that maybe the response from Big Pharma or from the FDA or both would be, well, we just have no confidence yet until the trials are over and we could actually be putting patients in harm's way. What would be the response to that?
Well, first of all, most terminally ill patients would tell you that they're going to die anyway. So their ability to access a trial medication may actually help the process. It may actually help speed up the scientific evaluation of the process, because if it helps them, they learn something. If it doesn't help them, they learn something. In addition to that, the way the right to trial law is formulated, the drugs are already within the FDA pipeline. They can't access it till it gets past the phase 1 trial, which is the safety phase. Then they could access the drugs in a phase 2 trial moving forward. Right now, they're not allowed to do that until they complete the phase 3 trial, So it's a limited amount of people that can actually apply for and get into those drug trials, which for a lot of the terminally ill patients just cuts them out completely.
Is there a payment issue? Let's assume that access were granted. Is there going to be an insurance question?
That is the big question that's out there, and the laws don't specifically address that issue. But the response from terminally ill patients is, number one, let us figure that out. There's no price tag to put on my life. The second part is that, right to try laws are in play in 30 states in the U.S., and the FDA has a compassionate use program in play right now. In all those protocols right now, nobody has been charged for accessing an experimental or a trial drug.
I know that you have a rally coming up at the Capitol. In fact, I'll mention the date. It's a bit away, but we'll mention it again as it draws near. It's June 16 at 1 p.m. It's titled "My Right to Try Rally," Thursday, June 16 at 1 p.m. Does this issue, I hope not, but does this issue break like so many others along polarized lines? Is it a Republican issue versus a Democratic issue?
To me, disease knows no politics. Disease affects everyone, regardless of race, color, creed, religion, or politics. It should not be a political issue. This should be an American issue of allowing Americans to have a decision-making process within their health care. Right now, the way the regulations within the trial process are set up, it takes that decision-making away from the Americans, especially the Americans with terminal illnesses, and it puts it in the hand of the FDA and in the hands of the pharmaceutical companies. That is not the way, the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution are set up. Americans should be able to decide what works for them and what doesn't work for them, and the politics of it should be removed. This should be
I hear you. I'm just curious as to whether you're lining up both Democratic and Republican supporters of My Right to Try.
There's Democrats on board with the House version of the My Right to Try bill right now. None so far on the Senate version of the bill, but up in Rhode Island, the Right to Try law just passed the state legislature by a unanimous vote.
Got it. Anything else you wanted to make sure you told us about?
I would just encourage all Americans, because I don't think there's a single person out there that doesn't either know or have somebody in their family that is dealing with a terminal illness or a devastating disease, to go to myrightotry.com and look at the information related to the rally and look at the information related to the bills and support these efforts, because it could affect you.
Hey, Don, thanks so much for educating us on this.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate the time on the radio show.
It's Donald Mihalek. He's the vice president of the Federal Law Enforcement Officers Association Foundation.